Hello, you guys. Today is like a gluten-free pie crust 101 class. I'm showing you how to make my pie crust 3 different ways so you can make it whether you have certain equipment or not. It is so easy to make, y'all, and rolling it out is just a breeze. But the best part about it is, of course, the taste and texture. It's all butter, but it can actually be made dairy-free if you want. So let's get into it and I'll talk you through it all. When I first developed this pie crust, it was years ago, and my video is from years ago, and it is horrible to say the least. I guess we all have to start somewhere, and it kind of shows just how far I've come with this whole video editing and whatnot, but man, it is awful looking. So I decided I needed to recreate the video with plenty more info on how to make the pie crust, but also on how to bake it for different types of pies. So for the food processor method, which was my original method, I have 3 cups or 420 grams of Kim's gluten-free all-purpose flour blend in the bowl of my food processor, and I just added 1 teaspoon or 6 grams of kosher salt, and now I'm adding 3 sticks, which is 339 grams of butter that's really, really cold and cut into big-ish cubes. And I'm going to put the lid on this and pulse it like, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 times. And as you can see, the butter is still in pretty large chunks. That's what you want. Now this is the unconventional part of this recipe. I have 1 egg that I've whisked with 1 tablespoon of white vinegar, and I'm adding some of my ice cold water to it, about a 1/4 cup or so, which is 60 grams. Not all of it. I'll probably need more, but I'm just going to start with this and pulse it through and see where I'm at. And I can definitely tell that I need more water. So I'm just going to stream in as much of this as I need, pulsing it on and off. And we're looking for like a somewhat wet dough actually that sticks together and it kind of rides the top of the blade, just like this. All right, this is perfect. So I'll get this portioned out onto 2 sheets of plastic wrap. I'll divide it roughly in half and just press it together really well into 2 separate discs. There's still plenty of little bits of butter in here, so this pie crust is still going to be very flaky. All right, y'all, I'm going to put this in the fridge to chill for at least 30 minutes, preferably an hour, but up to 3 days. But let's say you don't have a food processor. What do? No worries at all. You can actually use your stand mixer to make this pie dough. So I've got my flour blend and salt already in the mixer, and I'm just breaking up these chunks of really cold butter and tossing them in. And now I'll just pulse my mixer on and off on low. And what that's doing is it's kind of flattening the butter chunks on the sides of the bowl. So I'm going to let this go on low speed for just like 30 seconds or so. And while that's going on, I'll add my egg and vinegar mixture directly to the ice water and just give it a little whisk. All right, I'll pour this in and see if that's all the water I need. You don't ever want to add every bit of the water, so start on the lower end at first. Yeah, I actually don't think I need any more water here. This is looking good and it's staying together, so I'll stop here. One of the tricks I figured out a long time ago when I first started baking gluten-free and trying to make gluten-free pie crust is that you want the dough or the pie crust dough to be a little wetter than what a normal pie crust might be. So if you're used to making regular gluten-filled pie crust like I was, you kind of have to change your mindset a bit, because I feel that that's really the key to perfect gluten-free pie crust, is having a wetter dough than you would think you need. So When I first started out, I made the most horrible pie crust ever. Believe me, I remember making a pie to bring to my mom and dad's, and none of us could cut it with a fork, like cut it through with the fork. So we had to just basically eat the filling out of the pie. I can't remember what it was. It might have been a coconut cream pie, but it was awful. Let's say you don't even have a stand mixer either, which I have to say is truly an almost necessary tool in the gluten-free kitchen, especially if you're making your own breads. Anyway, you can also make this pie crust completely from scratch with just a bowl and your hands. And bonus, y'all, for this one, I'm using a dairy-free butter, so you can see that it works just as well as regular butter. I think this is Country Crock plant-based butter or something. So I have the flour and salt in my bowl already, and I've got my dairy-free butter chunks here. These are really cold. I actually put them in the freezer for like 10 minutes or so, just because I know dairy-free butter is softer than regular butter, or at least American regular butter. And I'll just toss all of these into the flour to coat, and then I'm going to flatten each piece with my fingertips like this. This will make like little sheets of butter throughout, which makes it really, really flaky. You can also use shortening for this, like Crisco, because that's what probably most of our mothers used many, many years ago. All right, I think all of these are flattened. Maybe I missed one or two, but I'll just go through with my hands now and break up any of the bigger pieces into smaller pieces. And now I'll kind of push everything aside, so I'll create a little well in the middle here. And I'm going to pour the egg vinegar water mixture in, and then toss it using my fingertips. And I can already tell this isn't enough water because it's really crumbly and there are lots of dry, like floury parts. So I'll add a little more. Don't ever add the entire amount of water right at the beginning, because as you can see, sometimes it's not all needed, like in the stand mixer method it wasn't, but I know I still need more now, so I'll just keep adding more, a little bit at a time, until I can press this together and it stays together. And this feels about right. I'll just knead this really quick to bring it all together. And this looks great, feels great, and I'll do the usual, divide it between my 2 sheets of plastic wrap. And now we can roll out one of the dough discs that we put in the fridge earlier. So I'm just going to dust my work surface with some of my all-purpose flour blend that I always have in a little container on the side here. And I'll sprinkle some on top of the dough as well, and I'm just going to start rolling it out. I basically roll it away from me and then back towards me. And then I turn it like 90 degrees and do the same thing again. Rolling and turning, rolling and turning. Always checking for sticking and adding more flour if I need to, or spreading around the flour that's already there. And if you notice, I never roll fully off the edge of either side, because that would just smush the edges down too much. So eventually it'll even out when I go to roll it in the opposite direction. I'm going for a big enough round to fit my pie plate, and at least maybe another 4 inches or so. And this is the way I prefer to transfer my pie dough. You can also fold it in half and then in half again and unfold it. Put the point in the middle of your pie plate and unfold it. I just like this method better. It's just so easy just to roll it up onto the rolling pin, and then you just unroll it right into the pie plate. But make sure you don't stretch it into the pie plate. You just want to kind of let it fall into the corners, or gently like push it into the corners and help it along, because if you stretch it, it's gonna shrink. All right, for this one, I'm actually going to trim off all this excess, but you really don't have to do this. I don't always do this. Most of the time, I just tuck it under and then I crimp it, but I thought I'd be different for this one just to show you there's more than one way to crimp a pie crust. And I always just do the basic crimp by pushing out with my one finger, and it gets that with my two fingers from my other hand. Because my pie crust crimping and making beautiful pie crust is just not my forte. I'm more concerned with them tasting great and having that great texture. So I always just do the usual, but there are so many ways to crimp a pie crust. Oh, don't throw away those scraps either. You can wrap them back up, or you can use them for decorations, like with little cookie cutters or whatever. Or you can do what my mom used to do and sprinkle them with cinnamon and sugar and put them in the oven for like 10 to 15 minutes. They were so, so good. All right, I'm going to put this in the freezer now for just like 10 to 15 minutes or until it's nicely firmed up. And this one is perfectly firm. So I'm going to grab a fork and I'll prick the bottom and the sides. You only want to do this if you're par baking or blind baking the pie crust. It just prevents the crust from puffing up. And I've got a sheet of parchment here that I crumpled up so it'll fit nicely into the pie plate. And then I'll add my pie weights, which in this case is rice, but I've actually used store-bought pie weights before, lost them many, many years ago. I also have used beans. They're really, cheap and perfect. Or you can even use sugar, which gets a little toasty, and then it can be used again in recipes. The most important thing is to make sure you fill the pie weights all the way to the top though. And we're going to bake this at 375 for 15 minutes or until it's just slightly brown around the edges. And then carefully take the pie weights out. And you should be able to see that the bottom is still shiny. So I'll put this back in the oven for an additional 5 minutes or so, just until the bottom of the crust is no longer shiny. And this is actually called par baking. It's usually done for pretty much any single pie crust that'll be filled and baked. I have plenty of examples on my blog post on the website, so just check it out. It helps to keep the crust from becoming soggy. So now for a pie when the filling won't be baked at all, you want to blind bake it fully like this one. I just left it in the oven for an additional 10 to 15 minutes instead of just 5, and it was perfectly golden brown all over. Blind baking is used for like fillings that won't need to go in the oven. Like they're cold, they go straight into the fridge, like cream pies or this French silk chocolate pie, yum, one of my favorites, or any refrigerated pie like that where the filling doesn't get baked. I again have several examples on the blog post, so just check it out. And finally, for a double crust pie, one of my all-time favorites is apple pie, my apple pie, because it's my mom's apple pie. There's really no need to par bake the crust. You just unroll the top crust onto the filling. And then what I like to do is take my kitchen shears and cut off the excess, still leaving, about a 1/2 inch or so hanging. And this will get tucked under the bottom crust edge. And then you just crimp it however you'd like. So there you have it, y'all. If this isn't the best pie crust you've ever had, gluten-free or not, I don't know what is. My husband is a pie connoisseur, and he constantly tells me how much he adores this pie crust. He really can't get enough of it. And y'all, he can eat all the gluten he wants. So check out this recipe post on the blog for more details about making this ahead and freezing it so you can get ahead for the holidays. Enjoy, y'all.